Yeah, it is. I have to do it.
Welcome, everyone, all our wonderful friends around the world.
Thank you for joining us today. We're very excited to have Sheyley with us, and we are going to introduce her. But first, if you wouldn't mind, we would love to see where you are joining us from. If you want to put that in the comments, and then ask any other questions throughout the interview, and we'd be happy to get to those. We are so appreciative of High Five Live giving us this opportunity to share and to hear the stories of those that we have as guests. And our guest today is an amazing person.
Remarkable, and we are so excited to share her with you.
She has been on our guest list for a long time, so I'm so grateful this worked out today. So thanks for being with us, Sheyley.
Thank you for having me.
So Sheyley is the founder of Inspire Family History. Her passion lies in helping parents and grandparents, teachers and leaders have ideas, tools, and resources. I love that. Ideas, tools, and resources for inspiring children and others of all ages to love family history. So her side is about children, but we're all children, right? So it can inspire all of us. And we'll talk about all age groups today. After being inspired to love family history as a child, Sheyley has spent countless hours researching, interviewing relatives, digging through old boxes and records, and sharing what she has learned. And can I just say, it's just so fun to be with somebody who is a kindred spirit, who loves family history as much as we do.
She calls herself a family history enthusiastical.
Yep.
And we put you in that club too.
Well, thank you. I'm honored.
Sheyley has presented at Roots Tech, MyHeritage, DNA Guide, and many societies and community family history classes. She's very busy sharing this. She graduated from BYU, Hawaii in International Cultural Studies with an emphasis in communications and intercultural peace building. That's awesome.
That's a big title.
So while homeschooling their 3 children, Sheyley and her husband, Brett, incorporate family history as much as possible, and we're excited to hear about your ideas there. She also enjoys hiking, playing tennis, baking, and reading. And she's on Instagram at Inspire Family History. So there you have it. We'll learn more about her. Sheyley, we're so grateful you're here, and we would just love to have you say anything else about the introduction that we missed.
Oh, I think you did a great job. Inspire Family History.
How did you ever get so involved in family history? How did this happen in your life?
Yeah, who inspired you?
My mom was the one who started inspiring me. She did little things like tell me stories about her life. Those were my favorite stories to hear as a kid, were stories about her life. She's a great storyteller. And even just while we were driving in the car, she'd tell me different things. And then throughout the years in Young Women's or different school assignments, I created a family tree and she would help me with that. And it just evolved. It was the little things that continued my interest. And then when I graduated high school, I was actually planning on going on a trip to Europe with a friend, which sounds totally crazy now, but that's what we were going to do. And it fell through. And I felt impressed. I had the personal guidance to go visit my grandparents. And I spent a week with each set of grandparents. And I had never done that one-on-one before. When I visited my grandparents, it was always as a family. And so I'd interact with them a lot, but not one-on-one. And so when I went, I interviewed each of my grandparents and I went through old boxes with them, and they took me to places that were significant in our family and to our ancestors. And it was just mind-blowing. It was a really incredible experience learning the stories of their lives and my ancestors, but also coming back with around 1,000 names to add to a family tree.
Whoa!
Yeah, it was incredible. And as you can imagine, it just lit the fire in me. It had been a flame before, but then it became a fire, and I just loved it. And I researched as much as I could, but then I eventually ended up, my passion turned to sharing what I was learning with my family and friends, and trying to get them excited about it. And that's what I love doing. And then I started Inspire Family History to help everybody have those tools to do that.
And
I
it
just
is
love
inspiring.
that.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. And we love your passion for sharing, because that is what we're talking about today, really, is how do you get other people interested? We know there's a lot of information from our church leaders about the benefits of family history and how, just the immense blessings from a spiritual standpoint.
But there also happens to be emotional and psychological benefits. And you've studied that quite a bit. Could you share with us something about that?
Yeah, let us know what you've discovered.
Yes. Well, I'd like to start with the spiritual benefits or spiritual blessings that you mentioned, because that was really impactful for me when I was young. I'm still kind of a young mom, but when I had just had my children, General Conference was coming up, and I just had this question. I was thinking, how was I able to make it through my teenage years and stay close to Jesus Christ? And I could not figure it out. It was this deep question I had, because there was so much. I recognized that there were so many times when I could have easily not stayed on the path. And I just had that question. And it's not like I was thinking about General Conference specifically with that question, but then General Conference happened, and Elder Bednar said in that conference that we will be protected from the influence of the adversary while we're doing family history. And it hit me so hard, because that was the answer to my question. Like, that was what helped me through my teenage years to stay close to Jesus Christ and to make choices that would help me in my life. So I have so much belief in those blessings that have been promised to us from our church leaders. But it's incredible also the scientific benefits that have been proven that come along with family history. There's a lot of studies that have been done, and I presented on this at Roots Tech. If they're still up, the Roots Tech sessions are still up. So if you haven't had a chance to watch Roots Tech yet, feel free to go on. They'll be up for the next year. But my session
let me interrupt here and just say, I put the links to her talks for Roots Tech in the comments under the meme for this session today, for this broadcast. So they're right there for you, but you can also just put in her name in the search bar at rootstech.org and find her talks. They're amazing.
And they are so inspiring. We've had a chance to listen, and they're amazing.
Thank you. So the one that my main session that I spoke about was studies that prove the benefits of family history. One of the most common studies out there is the Do You Know study, where some professors at Emory University, they did a study of children and youth, adolescents in their homes, and they went and they observed dinner table conversations, and they found that the children and youth that talked about their families during dinner table conversations were more resilient, were able to withstand challenges, had more self-confidence. And those are just a few of the benefits. But those are very significant, especially right now in the world that we live in.
Amen.
Things are constantly changing. Children's lives are, they're not able to play with friends as much as they want to, and different restrictions that change things for them. And this is kind of a big deal, especially for young children who may not have been through big challenges like this before. But even family challenges, family history can really help them to be resilient and to push through challenges in their lives. And our lives, even adults can benefit from it. My favorite study that I found that I talk about in my session as well is called the Ancestor Effect. And I just found this study mind-blowing because I had never heard of it before. And I wanted to bring it out in the family history community because I don't feel like it's super well known. but it was done in Europe, with various universities in Europe. And what they wanted to see was how thinking about our ancestors affects us intellectually. And so they had a bunch of students that they tested, and they had them think about an ancestor for 5 minutes. And then they had another group think of their last trip to the grocery store for 5 minutes. And then they took a survey of how they felt they would perform intellectually on an intellectual test. And they
Wow.
all of the people that had thought about ancestors felt like they would perform better intellectually. And then they furthered it by actually seeing if they would perform better intellectually on an IQ test, or it was the wild intelligence test. And the people that thought about their ancestors for just 5 minutes studied, or their scores were higher than those that just thought about everyday life. And then they furthered that study to see if it mattered whether they thought about positive family stories or negative family stories. And they had people think about positive and negative family stories, and then they had people think about positive and negative stories in other people's lives. So it was ancestors' lives versus just anyone. And the people who thought about their ancestors' positive or negative stories scored higher intellectually. And I just thought that was so interesting, because the benefits are not, the benefits aren't just emotional, it's also intellectual.
I never thought of that part of it.
Yeah.
That is
Me
fascinating.
neither.
And I love the idea that it really didn't matter if it was positive or negative, that we need to share all of that, because it helps be realistic about life, but help encourage each other to have that kind of resilience you talked about.
Exactly.
One of the studies you talked about, the title was, "Who Are You From?" Because we always talk about where. So do you want to just talk about that for a minute?
Yeah. So often when we meet somebody, we say, "Where are you from?" But when we think about who we are from, it's totally different. It's a deeper question.
Yeah.
Where we are from obviously is important. I studied international cultural studies, so I understand that culture is important, but the people that we come from are so significant, and their lives, their choices, their experiences come down the line and affect our lives. And so that is the question that she suggested, that I think it was Martha Draesnick, that she suggested that we think about, is who we are from. Because there's so many. I mean, if you think just back to our 10th grade grandparents, there's 8,192 people that we come from, just to that generation.
Yes, amen. Wow. So with all of your study and research about these benefits, what do you do in your home? What just are some things that you do as a matter of routine, and how are your kids affected by family history?
Yes, good question. So I homeschool my children, and so we incorporate it a lot into various subjects. There's lots of ways to incorporate family history into art projects, or into science even, or history, or music and writing. And there's so many ways to do that. I think even if you don't homeschool, or your children or grandchildren are in school, even just doing those things with them on the weekends or in the evenings, if you're doing a family activity, there's so many ways to incorporate family history. And
sometimes you just have to think, just have it in your mind. How can I do this? And just plan ahead, right? Or be spontaneous, whichever.
Yeah. My favorite activities, I'll just share a few favorite activities that we've done. But my favorite are when you just think of little things. So for example, my son is really into World War II right now. He loves World War II. He reads books all the time about it and watches videos, and it's just a passion for him. And I decided that I should jump on this with family history. And so we decided to go through our family tree and find out which ancestors fought in wars. And so we made a list of ancestors that fought in different wars. And so it kind of pushed his interest. He was like, what's the Mexican American War? You know, what were other wars that he hadn't heard of? But also finding the stories from World War II in my family. My grandma has a really powerful story that has really helped us in our lives. And so just thinking of their interests is really important. And we also incorporate family history into our traditions. We started a tradition where we do every year we have an Ancestor Celebration, and we bring out all of our heirlooms, we bring out all of our family pictures, and we make this big display on the table, and we put the pictures of the ancestor next to the heirloom, and we plan, everybody in the family picks a dish to make that's from an ancestor, because I had put together a family cookbook of recipes from family members. And so that we go through it and everybody picks an ancestor recipe and we make it. And then we play a game from one of the countries that our ancestors came from. If you're German at all, the game that we learned or we tried was Chocolat de Nessen. I'm going to butcher it. I don't even know how to say it right, but it was really, really fun and lots of laughter in the house. And so those are some ideas that we love incorporating, but it's important when you think about when you're trying to inspire someone to love family history, it's a kind of a long-term thing. It's not just like a one-time, we do this one thing and they'll love family history. It's lots of little things. And at Inspire Family History, we've come up with 3 keys to finding the right idea to inspire somebody.
Awesome. Let's hear those.
Yeah. So the first key might seem a little obvious, but it's age. Like, think about how old they are, because certain activities are more appropriate for younger children. Certain activities are more for older children or youth, and then adult children, right? So think about their age and then the second key is interest. If we think about what interests them, for example, I shared that idea with my son with World War II. If your child is into photography, there's ideas of to do with photography. And then the third key is think of their natural learning style. Are they more auditory learners or kinesthetic learners, meaning hands-on, or are they visual learners? And when you think about those 3 things, age, interest, and learning style, it can help you to nail down an idea. So if you have a teenager who's into photography and is a kinesthetic learner, there's things, for example, I don't know if anybody's heard of Shotbox. It's a box that you can, it has different backgrounds within the box, and you can take pictures of heirlooms or documents or photos in a nice way and post them and help those to be remembered in a nice way, right? So teens, or a girl or a boy like that might enjoy doing that, as opposed to maybe searching, which I love searching, but not everybody loves searching. And so there's hands-on ideas to kind of get to that point where they might want to search and do research. But yeah, there's just lots of ideas for different ages. If
So
a child
many
is
ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So glad you mentioned Inspiring. Tell us a little about your website again so that they know where to find it. I know we've listed it on the comments, but.
Yeah, thank you. It's inspirefamilyhistory.com.
Yep.
And if you go on there, on the first page, you can see our mission statement, and you can see different, you can find the keys. You can also find recent blog posts. So there might be something there that might interest you as far as blog posts go, we also have a page that has ideas. And if you click on ideas, then you'll see the categories. For example, photos or events or travel or art. There's different categories, and then you'll find ideas to do with those categories. We also share a lot.
What a gold mine. We love it.
That's a lot of work. Thank you so much for all of that.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes.
Thank you.
So what would be your advice to parents who do have teens, in addition to like finding their interests and helping them have discovery experiences? Any other tips for motivation to get them involved?
I think the biggest thing is finding an idea that would interest them and helping them to have those experiences where it's positive. Because sometimes we feel pressure to do family history because we're told it's a good thing or whatever, but and then there's also family history guilt. People can feel guilty because they're not doing it and they know they should be, right? Or they've heard they should be, or they see the benefits, but they don't make the time for it. So it's important to help youth to have experiences that are positive and fun. And then once they have those experiences, then they'll see how cool it is. It won't seem like a labor.
Yes, for sure. And I love what you've been saying about the family stories and keeping a narrative going all the time where you're sharing those stories. I think when they see their ancestors in the light of how old were they? Were they my age? What happened to them? We have an ancestor who came at 17 from Wales to America by himself. He had one sister with him, and then worked and sent money back home to bring everybody else in his family over. What an inspiration. And we're filled with stories like that. Where do you find your stories?
Ooh, that's a good question. I like that one. Stories are so powerful. And I just was talking with a youth a few weeks ago during Roots Tech, and she said that what got her into family history was the stories. Once she, like exactly what you said, once she realized that her ancestors were living people just like we are, it actually, what she said is that it made her realize that her life was interesting because she found things interesting about her ancestors and realized that her life was interesting too. And I thought that was so powerful.
So powerful.
Yeah, but stories have so much power, and finding those stories is so fun. That's part of the discovery. And one of the ideas on our website is called Sources to Stories.
Oh, great.
And what you can do is go on to Family Search or Ancestry or MyHeritage, whatever you use, and look at the sources of an ancestor and the photos and the documents and the memories, and piece together their story based off of what's already there. Because right now, or normally when you go on there, it's all facts. But when you turn the facts into stories and pull the stories out, then you have stories to share and to benefit you personally, but also to share with your grandchildren, your children, your siblings, your parents. And that can help inspire.
Oh, absolutely. And I think sometimes we forget that we do have living relatives that can tell stories, and we need to get those stories recorded while we can, while they're still living and can share them.
Definitely. I've had a lot of it. As I said before, I visited my grandparents, so I recorded their stories, but there's so many other relatives too. You can think about your grandparents or your great grandparents, depending how old you are, right? They have siblings too. And everybody has different perspectives. So when I asked questions to my grandma's brother, we went and visited him in England because I felt like I needed to meet him. He was such an incredible person. When I was talking to him and asking questions, I learned things about my great grandparents that my grandma didn't tell me. And even though I recorded her life story, I didn't hear those facts. And the more people you can interview, the better. Even if it's friends of maybe a younger parent passed away, and you can find who their close friends were during their life and interview them and get stories from them. So even
Great idea. Oh my gosh, this has been so fun. We could go on for an hour.
Yeah, we
talking to you. We appreciate it so much. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about and haven't been able to? Share it with us.
Stories are just the best. And I'll just share one story. Well, actually, I could share so many stories. I don't know which one to pick. But you know what I'll share is recently we've been doing spring cleaning in our house, and it has been really tough on my kids to clean so much, right? And and what I remembered is a story that my grandpa told me. And he said that when he was 11 years old, he worked on a farm all day long, but before he worked on the farm, he would deliver newspapers. So he got up early, delivered newspapers, then went and worked on the farm all day. And then in the evening, he would set bowling pins in a bowling alley because they didn't have the machines back then. So knowing that my grandpa at 11 years old worked all day long, when I share that with my 11-year-old son now, he realizes that he can do hard things. He can work these few hours that we're working, and he can do it because his grandpa or his great grandpa did it. And so if we know the stories, we can share them when the time comes, when those opportunities for those learning experiences come. And like we said before, the negative stories are important too. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it might feel right to share a negative story, and that will help them to see the truth of the family, see the good and the bad, which equals the truth, right?
And what they can learn from it.
That's right.
From hearing about it. Yeah. So we have talked about resources and tools, and I don't know if you know, but Sheyley does webinars and live videos for MyHeritage. And I have to say, they have come up with such fun things that would interest youth and children. The colorization of black and white pictures, and the new one, what's it called, where they animate the faces. So
yeah,
you
that is so neat.
You put in a picture, a photo, and they make it live. Like the photo will smile at you and look at you.
Yeah.
It's so fun. And also a couple more resources. The Family Search, of course, has tons of fun family history activities for all ages. And so does the Family History Guide. And, when you look, there are tons of ideas, but mostly I think you will be inspired, like you said, to know your child, your youth, your family member, to know how to motivate them and help them, and never give up hope that they can become a family enthusiastical too.
Yes, for sure. Thank you. I'd also encourage you to check out inspirefamilyhistory.com, and you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Inspire Family History.
Thank you so much, I'll say.
Yeah, thanks for being with us.
And share this with others. Wonderful information, great insights, and look at those Roostek docs. They are fantastic.
They really are.
Thanks so much.
You are a treasure. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me. This is great. Bye.